What's good, people? It's DJ Snips from the Jump Off TV UK Friday Hip Hop Report debates. I made a comment in the debate about grime being an extension of hip hop, more so our version of UK rap music. We can make hip hop music or whatever, but essentially it's a culture that is birthed in the States. I don't care what anyone says, grime is a form of hip hop. It is people rapping over a beat which stems from America. For anyone that follows myself on Twitter, you would have seen me debating with journalist, blogger, and all-round dancehall enthusiast Marvin. Initially, my point was grime music is something that is born out of an extension of hip hop fused with our own regional sound within the UK.
On the thing itself, it didn't really sound like that. It was more of grime is just US hip hop, but just us doing basically what they do over there, which I disagree with, because saying it's our version of hip hop kind of ignores the whole train of our own homegrown music that's always been there. Going all the way back, you have like the dancehall, Saxon sound and all of that. Then you had like the acid house, which still had kind of reggae. Not to say that it's just a reggae thing, but you know what I'm saying? Jungle, garage, and then came grime. And I think that it was kind of a disservice to the whole of that to say, oh, it's just us doing an American hip hop type thing.
The musics we've mentioned, for example, garage isn't UK music. UK garage is our own version of American house and garage music. And obviously reggae is not British music.
No.
It's Jamaican music. Like hip hop is not regional to America, it's regional to New York. New York is a birthplace of hip hop. Anywhere else in America that's created their own sound of hip hop have done it by taking true school hip hop, which is the New York sound of hip hop, and fusing it with their own regional influences. I mean, if you listen to the first hip hop artists that came out of Miami or Atlanta, people like Outkast and Scarface and Ghetto Boys, they had a very New York sound in hip hop. You need to go back before Miss Jackson and you'd actually realize Outkast had a very New York sound. To me, when they came into their own sound was when they fused their regional sounds, i.e. Miami based, the 808 music with the true school hip hop sound. And the same thing happened in the West Coast. NWA made a very New York based sound. It was very sample based, it was breaks driven. And if you listen to what people like Warren G and Snoop started to do, they fused it with the P-Funk sound that was regional to the West Coast. What we've done with grime music, anybody that came up until about 2003, we were essentially just making the true school sound in New York hip hop with reggae influence fused in there, but then there was a lot of New York artists doing the same thing. We also had our garage scene, our dance music scene, our jungle scene, and to me what we've done is the two of those are fused, and culturally I think we've come up with a hip hop style which is uniquely British because it fuses those elements, but to me culturally it's still hip hop. It comes from the same underbelly of urban society that essentially doesn't have a voice. That's what it was born out of in New York, and to me it's born out of the same thing in the UK.
The thing with hip hop is that we associate hip hop with being American because, as you said, it was born in New York, but I don't think a lot of the guys such as Chipmunk, Tiny Temper, Tinchy Strider started rapping because of, say, Nas, Jay-Z. I think they more looked at people like So Solid, Pay As You Go, Heartless,
but who do you think So Solid was looking at?
Well, So Solid, and I know like personally that them guys used to go to Ragga Raves and that, but I know that they did have an American influence in their thing. But for example, if you look at Dizzy Rascal and Asher D Clash, which was kind of a bit of a changing of the tide, you saw that Dizzy had a completely different style to what Asher D was coming with. If I remember correctly, like Asher was cussing Dizzy saying, oh, you're coming with basic bars, or you don't want to spit garage. Well, we're doing a rap thing. Their second album, Broken Silence, they made a rap thing and it didn't connect with the youth market as their first one did. So then I mean, you compare that to like Boy in the Corner, for example. It was completely different thing. I mean, obviously grime was a newer sound, but it was what the youth were listening to. The youth weren't listening.
Essentially, Boy in the Corner, the biggest record of Boy in the Corner was Fix Up Look Sharp, which was a hip hop record.
Commercially, yeah, but before that, you had like a lot of his lyrics. That's the thing. I wouldn't even say that it was the actual songs that kind of got him to that point. It was him going to raves and being basically the best MC out there. Well, one of the best MCs out there. And the song that kind of got him to that point was I Love You, which I wouldn't say was a hip hop song.
I'm not obviously saying that grime is exactly the same as New York hip hop, because it's not. But let's take like Little John for an example, who's a crunk artist, which I believe crunk to be a subgenre of hip hop. What Little John does compared to what Nas does, there's obviously a massive difference. It's not the same music, but it comes under the same banner. And I don't think what Little John's doing is any more far removed from what Nas does to what Dizzy Rascal was doing. It's still essentially coming from culturally the same place and musically coming from a similar place. it's to me, so it comes under the same umbrella. I'm not denying the other influences, which is what helped create Dizzy's sound or Wiley's sound or who anyone else's. It's been a transition. So if you look at the very, very early days of grime, like if you look at what Wiley was doing, it's a lot more garage and dance music sounding than what, for example, someone like Kano ended up doing. Even lyrically, if you listen to Kano rap compared to Wiley, there's a lot more of a emphasis on lyricism within Kano's stuff. He's obviously more influenced by hip hop. So obviously it's a journey that has got us to where we are now. But even using the term grime, I do youth work and I work with young kids, and they will tell you they listen to grime, and when you ask them who their favourite grime artists are, they'll say Giggs and K Coke. From our background, that's not grime, that's hip hop music. But it's got to the point now where the two are fused into one, and it's essentially a British sounding form of music that these kids are gravitating towards, and they will call it grime.
Okay, if you're putting it like that, but I mean, as you said, we don't really refer to them as grime. Like to us,
that's like saying,
because Snipo, I wouldn't call him a grime artist, and I don't think.
No, but plenty of these kids would group it under the same banner. We can say it's not, but then how does that make us any different from the 35-year-old rap fan in the States who says Soulja Boy is not hip hop? Essentially it is hip hop. If that's what the kids call it, and that's what the youth who are essentially buying the music are calling it, then surely it's that. And to me, what we have as grime right now is different to what was going on 5 or 6 years ago.
Correct. I would agree that the lines are a bit blurred now, because I mean, obviously you'll get, say like Skepta for example, will work with Giggs, and I don't know, maybe it will be a class as a hip hop song. But whereas one point you wouldn't get like a Skepta working with Sway for example. Another thing that I would like to say is that this conversation's been quite MC driven, but there is also that side where you get guys like Butters and Royal T that will DJ and they're just playing strictly instrumentals. Predator released the Circles EP, and you got Royal T who himself has made like Orangeade and whatnot, and they've just been strictly instrumentals, which isn't something that is hip hop, but it is still grime. Do you get what I'm saying? So there is still that connection to like the house.
But it depends on what you consider. I mean, all of it comes from hip hop for the simple fact that they're using 2 turntables and mixing the records together in a club. Essentially, DJing is an art form. Mixing 2 records together and being creative with 2 turntables comes from hip hop.
Does it though?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you also had sound system culture in Jamaica that did the same thing.
They were playing records.
Yeah.
They weren't mixing records. If you look at what would happen in parties in New York, you'd have DJs coming back with a specific breakbeat that was popular at the time, that the DJ would be cutting up on loop, and you'd have everybody come through. And
fair enough, but I don't think that these grime people got that from hip hop.
Whether or not they are aware that it came from hip hop is a different story.
I wouldn't say that it came from hip hop though, because I mean, you could say it came from sound system culture, and I think that's where these kids were more likely to have got it from, because the likes of Skipper D, MC Shabba that were spitting on Jungle, Skipper D himself will tell you that he looked at people like Papa Levi from Saxon Sound. So I wouldn't say that it's something that's come from hip hop. It is something that is unique to the UK. And
I don't think it's
like a range
unique to the UK though, because obviously it's come from somewhere. I think it's there in hip hop, it was there in reggae, and it's now there in grime.
Sorry, I meant like the actual end result of it. But that whole thing, I'd say that they more got that from reggae than they did hip hop.
There's definitely elements of what goes on within grime music that came more from reggae, or there's elements that came more from the dancing. But if you look at culturally what grime is, like hip hop was birthed as a voice for people in the inner city that didn't have a voice otherwise, and as an alternative.
So was reggae. So how can you say, oh, it's hip hop then? That's made it come to this. If I was explaining to a simpleton in America what grime is, then I guess I would say it's like our equivalent to hip hop. But I wouldn't say that it is an equivalent to hip hop. I mean, it's like crunk, for example, as you said, it's got rappers rapping on it, but oh, it's a bit bassy, but yeah, it's hip hop. But I wouldn't say that that's the same thing with grime.
If you look at Little John, for example, Little John comes from a reggae background.
Little
John was initially a reggae
dancer DJ,
and there's elements of dancehall within the music that he made.
Yeah, definitely.
So how come grime isn't an extension of hip hop, but crunk is?
Well, another thing I would say is that with this whole hip hop band, it's basically anyone that's come from a poorer background or whatever that makes that kind of music gets branded as hip hop. For example, Blondie rapped on her song, but it wasn't called a hip hop song.
In all fairness, at that point though, there wasn't any such thing as a hip hop.
Fair enough. Would you call Gwen Stefani a hip hop artist, even though she rapped on Hollaback Girl?
No, of course not. It's not culturally coming from the same place.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
But grime is culturally coming from that same place.
Yeah, it's not coming from hip hop in America. It's coming from England. It's an English thing.
You're not answering my question there, because hip hop isn't just American. It's New York centric. Yeah. So when people do the same thing in Atlanta and they take their own regional sounds and they fuse it with hip hop, we consider that hip hop.
Mainly because we're told it's hip hop. If that happened here, crunk would be crunk. Dubstep is called dubstep. Like grime is called grime. Like garage is called garage. G-funk would be G-funk. Whatever they had in New York would just be called hip hop. Whereas with us, we always change and then they just bracket it all under the urban bracket. Or UKG, for example, like you'll listen to like Cameo Show and you'll play garage, and that's just an easy term of saying, oh yeah, it's all kind of similar sort sort of thing.
Yeah.
But over here, crunk would just be crunk, and that would have been the crunk scene.
Yeah.
And then as it progressed to say the chopped and screwed, then chopped and screwed would just be chopped and screwed. It wouldn't be called hip hop.
So essentially what we're doing is we're just not acknowledging the roots of the music that we made then.
I would say that saying it's hip hop sounds like we've just tried to make our own version of hip hop, whereas it's just a natural evolution from time up until now.
Due to globalization, things aren't as regional as what they once were. Culturally, grime comes from the same place as hip hop, just on the other side of the water. Musically, it has influences from a wide range of things, but culturally, it's more similar to hip hop than it is to dance music.
You said urban music is like black music. I was under the impression that urban music was street music. I didn't think it was actually a colour. Well, I thought street music is just like that. When you describe even clothes, like urban fashion, streetwear, I just think it's more what's come from the roads. It doesn't really matter what colour it is.
Jesse J made one song that we could all agree is urban, yeah? But the rest of the stuff isn't. Are we agreeing on that?
Yeah.
All right.
Some of it
Can we,
is
hold on one
soulful
second.
though. There are
No,
some
hold on. So, no, let me finish.